Thank you for joining us, party people, for the very first episode of Season 3. They thought we wouldn't get here. We are Season 3. We have at least twice that many listeners and subscribers, so we are moving. I mean, it's like the Joe Rogan podcast and then us. I can't imagine that there's somebody in between us. I am Bill Mariano. I am here with my co-host, as always, Rob Hellewell. And again, thank you for having us here. We're going to stick with the same formula for the show. And today's episode is really going to be no different. We're going to start out with our favorite portion, Season 3. We're going to get into something that's near and dear to my heart, or rather causing me anxiety, in the section that we called
Sightings of Radical Brilliance.
Of course, as the name implies, this is the part of the show where we bring to you the latest news of noteworthy innovation, acts of sheer genius, and yes, I'm going to say it, acts of cheating. We are going to talk about the Houston Astros scandal. As a Yankee fan, I will tell you right now, I am not happy. I am completely biased. I am turned off. This is a black eye that's on the sport of baseball, and it also ruined my 2017 fall and October. Rob, I know you feel just as passionately about this as I do.
This is one of the things you're really going to have to help me out here. Like, Bill for years has made fun of my lack of knowledge of sports in general and baseball specifically. For the life of me, I cannot understand why this is such a big deal. And please help me understand this.
Sure. So I will do that. So there are some unwritten rules and then some written rules in baseball, okay? And so, look, everybody, even people that don't know baseball, understand that the catcher gives a sign to a pitcher. If you're standing on second base, and they usually do this by holding their hand down, one for fastball, two for curve, and obviously they mix that up. If you're standing on second base and you can get a peek in and you can see what's coming, and you're like, my teammate's up at bat, it's considered part of the sport that if you can catch it and somehow signal to the batter, then it's really on the team to change their signs up. You're allowed to try to steal signs. Okay, you're allowed to do it, and it was always sort of one of those things. It was an unwritten rule. You're not supposed to, but everybody did. It was part of the game. What the Astros did was they took it to the next level. So they had this code breaker. The front office knew about it, so the whole organization is now involved. Okay, this is not just somebody standing at second base that thinks that might be a fastball coming to notify the hitter. They set up a team. The team was, of executives and a couple. I think it even started with an intern, and they figured out. They went and looked back and watched tape of all the different teams that they were playing, and they tried to decode their signs, a code breaker, and they were able to do it for most, if not all, of the teams. Then what they did was they set up a camera in center field, okay, and the camera was specifically set up to show the catcher flashing the signs. And in real time, that camera would be broadcasting to a big screen TV that was in the clubhouse at the Houston Astros home games. From there, if they saw a fastball coming, they wouldn't do anything. If it was an off-speed pitch, they would somehow signal the batter. Now, so the technology part of this is the camera for this portion. And then they took a very low-tech approach of notifying the hitter by banging a garbage can if it was going to be an off-speed pitch. Now, if you ask anybody who's ever played baseball, if you know what's coming, it makes the game exponentially easier, okay? If you know what's coming, this is why it's different than maybe the steroid scandal, where also cheating was involved, right? In steroids, people, even when they weren't testing for them, it was an unwritten rule you shouldn't be on these performance-enhancing drugs. Now it's obviously a rule, you get these big suspensions. But, the reason why it's different here is a couple things. One, the whole organization was involved. It wasn't an individual player cheating by taking steroids. Two, there's technology involved. And you're leveraging now technology. And I guess what the league wants to make sure of is this isn't a race to see who can get the best technology to steal signs and notify the hitter. And then they took it a step further. Now, this part's conjecture. This was not the commissioner of the Major League Baseball did not find this in his investigation, but if you look online, and the Twitterverse is blowing up with different video evidence and theories, that they evolved from banging the garbage can to actually taping buzzers onto players like Jose Altuve and Bregman and different players on the team, whose averages and especially in the playoffs went up quite a bit when they knew which pitches were coming, i.e. when they were playing at home versus on the road. And so the buzzer would be something that they would activate somehow in the dugout or in the clubhouse, notifying if it buzzed, okay, an off-speed pitch is coming. Now, again, if you know anything about baseball when you're playing it, if you know which pitch is coming, it just becomes so much easier to hit. When you're gearing up for a 99 mile per hour fastball and someone throws you an 89 mile per hour changeup, you're gonna swing and miss most times. Similarly, if you're looking for a curveball and a fastball is going to blow right by you because you're gearing your swing up for something different.
So let me just stop you here for a second. So
you're going to have to stop me several times because I'm fired up.
For people out there like me, so you have this practice that had gone on for years and years and years where people were stealing signs. A team came along and just made it a little more high tech, and suddenly that made it bad.
Yes.
And but in every other aspect of the sport, like I saw the movie Moneyball. They use data analytics to make draft choices and impact all aspects of the game. That's okay.
That's fine. That's just running your organization differently. When it starts affecting the performance on the field, like here's what I'll say. If you can use a baseball bat to hit the ball, obviously. You can also, using technology, you can drill a hole down the barrel of the bat. You can load it up with super balls. You plug it back up with wood and cork, and the ball goes 20, 30 feet further. If you get caught doing that, you get suspended. It's cheating. It's using technology in that case. They put super balls, these little rubber balls, in the barrel of the bat. And they cork it. They call it corking the bat. Similarly, if you do anything to the ball, if there's anything that you do in the field of play that leverages some sort of technology or altering of the game in any way, that's always been prohibited, strictly prohibited. Looking at a sign, catching it from second base, somehow signaling to the hitter, or sometimes what they'll do is they'll decide, all right, this pitch is going to be on the inside corner. I can tell where the catcher's setting up. Maybe I'll lift my left hand to notify the batter about location. There are certain things like that you're never going to be able to get rid of. But 3 years ago, the Red Sox got caught doing something fairly similar with an Apple Watch. And the commissioner said then, he gave him a slap on the wrist, and then he made an edict to the entire league. You're on notice. You guys cut this out because it'll be a race to the best technology. We don't want this in our sport. If we catch anybody doing it again, there's going to be dire consequences. And the Astros did it again. So even if I agreed with you, Rob, that, listen, this is always, they just found a high-tech way of doing it. They were on notice from 2016 that if they did it, there would be consequences. The whole league was on notice. They did it. They ruined. The Yankees should have went to the World Series in 2017. And I'm not saying they would have beat the Dodgers, but they would have beat the Dodgers. We would have another championship. No one's crying for the Yankees. I don't expect anybody to, with all the 27 World Championships that we have. That said, it's bad for the game. I mean, cheating is bad for the game. Steroids was bad for the game. This is bad for the game. It's the kind of spotlight you're going to put on a major league sport that they don't want, and I think we could all agree with that. Whether you think it was that big of an advantage or not, and you could look at the numbers, the home and away averages, and things like that. The bottom line is, it's not good that in between October, when the World Series happened, and opening day in next month, that the only reason that baseball's in the news is over a cheating scandal.
I know Bill's been losing sleep over this for a long, long time, and we could probably talk about this for another hour, but I'll just say, I guess I kind of get it, but it kind of doesn't make sense to me either.
Well, I mean, a curveball on a 3-2 count doesn't make sense to you either, dude. But it's because you don't get it. I mean, don't curb my anxiety here, dude. This is real. I got to go see a shrink about this stuff. But I'll get to the podcast. I get it.
Anyway, well, before we jump directly into our guest speaker segment for today, I think we should probably set the stage a little bit. In the first 3 episodes of season 3, we're actually going to be taking live recordings from our first ever live Law and Candor show that we did during Legaltech in January. What we've done is all 3 of these segments will be trickled out to our audience over the next 3 episodes. We're extremely excited to share them. The live sessions were incredible, and we're glad that we're able to incorporate those into the podcast. We're going to start with the first segment, which was a great friend of ours, Josh Kramer of AstraZeneca. Josh is going to answer some key questions around big data and help us uncover some really important solutions. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. Josh, maybe just to get started, not everyone has the pleasure of knowing you like we do. Give us just a little bit about your background and how you got to this state.
Sure. I'm an attorney and a technologist, a technology-oriented person. And I first practiced and then went into e-discovery, and now I'm inside AstraZeneca. My job is to deliver technology solutions in the e-discovery space, to oversee the teams that operate that technology, and to help build processes that will drive positive outcomes.
How do you explain to your mom what you do for a living? Because I still haven't figured out how to explain to my mom.
I just go, lawyer.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. I think somehow in the last few years, analytics became maybe the most overused word in our industry. But from your perspective and what you're trying to do at AstraZeneca, what does big data analytics mean to you?
It's really about making the data usable so that you can drive value out of it. A set of big data can either be this morass that you glumly shuffle from archive to archive, never knowing how to get rid of it and not being able to afford to keep it all, or it can be a repository for information that can be useful for reaching positive business outcomes, things like reducing the cost of review.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Let's talk about some of the big challenges that we're facing in sort of with big data analytics today in our industry.
Well, there's the classic problem that there's just so much of the data, but also the nature of it is changing. And there's a lot of proprietary data types. There are a lot of data sources coming from various apps. Structured data is a problem because sometimes you have to sort of recreate the source it came from in order to make it useful. And generally, I think the biggest problem is not having clear insight into your data and not clearly knowing, not being able to gain information from it.
Yep.
I think we'd all agree that there's a lot of challenges, but in your job and in your position, how did you start to sort of tackle some of those challenges, and what were the outcomes you were looking for?
Well, first of all, these views are my own and not necessarily those of AstraZeneca. If you don't agree with my views, then they all came from Bill.
Yeah, that's a standard.
That's the same thing McManus says, by the way.
Really?
Every time he introduces me.
When he says that, then. No, we just tackle these challenges one thing at a time. I mean, if you have hundreds of terabytes of data, take a piece of it. Find your most repeated custodians, get some information from there. Get a little bit of insight, demonstrate that there's value from it, and then spread and then expand it. And that's how you get stakeholder buy-in as well.
Yeah, I think we when we've delved into this and we've had conversations about this, the interesting thing is you start to see trends in the data, and if the trends make sense to you anecdotally, then you start to buy into the fact that some of this is working with big data analytics. So how do you get, again, with clients we see that, right? We show them something and they say, wow, that actually makes sense. I could see how you got there. I didn't realize that was a fact and I had no empirical evidence. Now I realize how you got there. How do you get buy-in internally? How do you get buy-in to, I want to start leveraging some big data analytics principles, algorithms, what have you. And how do you get buy-in to actually go down that road? Because for a company, that's a big. I mean, I know companies are doing this around marketing and stuff. But like in our industry, how do you get buy-in on that?
Go to the bottom line ultimately. Show the ways in which you can save money, improve outcomes, increase defensibility, reduce risk, and don't focus on the things that you think are cool and sophisticated, like shiny analytics and metrics and reporting. All of those things are important, but ultimately they're toward the end of defensively reducing the population that you have to pay people to review.
Yep.
Josh, where do you think that analytics will make the biggest impact in the legal world in general?
Ultimately, I think in predicting litigation outcomes. I think we're pretty far from that, but I think ultimately you'll be able to pull the hottest data from all of the sources you've collected and use that to drive some model of settlement.
On one of our earlier podcasts, we talked about some of the, direct brain connect technology that's being developed, and we sort of joke that, what if you had something that plugged into just, a company's network, could quickly go through and extract, the most relevant information for a matter, like will that kind of an outcome be possible, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. I think that you can take all of the information surrounding the data and use it as an organizing principle so that the data is easier to get to. But whether you'll be able to get through to all of the different systems internally, there's a lot of barriers to that.
Yeah.
I think that more likely we'll already have our data categorized so that you won't need to go out and get it. It will essentially come to you based on your need.
Yeah, and it's interesting now with 365 being able to index data in place in a variety of different sources I think is going to lead the way towards a lot of this stuff. Rob's going to wrap this up with some of the key takeaways from this, but I had one more question. Do you think this turtleneck makes me look smarter with the glasses?
Absolutely.
Because I was completely insecure about doing this with such a smart panel.
Totally.
Right? Okay, cool. Because I figured, as Kelly pointed out earlier, I'm a gold chain away from being a Guido. You know?
It says two things about you.
Yeah.
One, that you're smart and stylish, and two, that you're wearing a turtleneck.
Or that I'm faking. Well, I appreciate that. Josh, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate
Yep,
it.
you got it.
That was great. I think the three takeaways that we have from this session is first, data analytics is about making data as usable as possible and driving better outcomes. Second, I thought Josh summarized this well, getting stakeholder buy-in and showing them really what's in it for them and how it impacts their bottom line in a very real and practical way is another great pointer. And then finally, I think, hottest area for the future with data analytics is actually using data to predict outcomes in legal matters. And I thought that Josh brought up some good points about that as well. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for our first episode of Season 3. We look forward to seeing you next time.